Hey guys, this is the MMA breakdown back with predictions for UFC 198 Werdum versus Miocic. And for the last event, UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Arlovsky, I was 8 for 13, 6,386 for the event. That moved me to 4,130 overall. Not sure if that's above or below where I was before the event. I would have to check the last video, but I think I was right around there, the low 4,000s. I think it was between 4,000 and 4,100. So if I dropped, I don't think it was too much. All right, and then I'll just scroll through my picks. The Silva-Struve fight, it's really sad to see, Bigfoot, just all the brain damage the guy has taken at this point. He should have retired several years ago by now. I mean, his time in the sport is the time for him to retire. It's long overdue. But I was not going to be surprised if Struve beat him. But the Tukhugov-Nelson fight, was very surprised by that. Nelson had a really great performance. Tuck and Emmett, I didn't really know what to expect. Cabral and Madadi, I was surprised by that one. I felt pretty confident in Cabral. And then Gates as well is really surprised. The guy just doesn't have a ground game. All right. So on to predictions for UFC 198. UFC 198, Werdum versus Miocic. Sorry for the late video, guys. Was busy with some stuff. Had to finish up some stuff, but this is not going to be typical. Just finished school, so I definitely intend to be. I intend to get these videos out at least a couple weeks ahead of time from now on. I've been saying that for a while, but I really think I'll have the time now to do that, and hopefully I'll be able to make a few other changes to the show, which I think will be, which I think will make it better for you guys. But yeah, I will have my next video out for Almeida versus Garbrandt very, very soon. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. I always live tweet during fights, so follow me. UFC 198 Werdum versus Miocic. Everyone's saying it's the best Brazilian card ever. It's really paying homage to the Brazilian legends, but I'm not buying it. I will say the main, co-main, and featured prelim fights are all fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to those. Those are amazing fights, but as far as the rest of the card goes, I'm not going to say it sucks, but I'm just not too interested in it really at all. But really, the two fights that are really bothering me, the Shogun Anderson fight and the Lil Nog Cummins fight, I don't understand these matchups really at all. I mean, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Hua and Nog to pass the torch to these other guys who, frankly, at least in the case of Cummins, Cummins is only 4 years younger than Nogueira, which is just I can't, that doesn't even compute in my mind. But even with wins, which I think is very likely for both guys, and I think both these fights are pretty much they're pretty much identical matchups. Even with wins, I think it's pretty unlikely that either of these guys become stars, just because both of them are pretty boring fighters. Not bad fighters, but I think we've kind of seen the limits of both already. But I just don't think even beating these guys, these legends at this point, I don't think it's really going to do much for them in terms of really gaining traction with fans. And more than that, it's like, why do you want to kill off these legends in this way? I mean, I thought the St. Preux Shogun fight, that would have been a better fight for Shogun to go out on if it's a loss. I mean, going out just getting knocked out, where one guy who the guy who he loses to does have the potential to become a star and is an exciting fighter to watch. But just to watch Shogun and Lil Nog just get out wrestled and pounded on by these guys, to me that's a much sadder death than getting finished. But I don't know why they didn't give these guys a legend versus legend matchup, a trophy fight to go out on. I mean, that's how you respect and appreciate a legend, is by having him face off against another legend. I honestly would rather see the Shogun versus Lil Nog a rematch, or I guess it would be the trilogy fight. That is a trilogy fight, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is. And in Brazil, giving those two Brazilian legends a trilogy fight, and I know a lot of people thought Nogueira should have gotten the decision last time. Why not do something like that? I don't know. It doesn't give me a good feeling, expecting both these guys to go down in a very lackluster fashion to Anderson and Cummins, but wasted way too much time talking about those two matchups. But yeah, the main, co-main, and featured prelim fights, really looking forward to those. Alright, so starting off with the UFC Fight Pass prelim card, the first fight at featherweight, Renato Moicano versus Zubaira Tukhugov. On the surface, I think it looks like Tukhugov is the better striker and should probably win this fight, but I don't know that the competition he's faced is all that much better than the one guy Moicano beat. Ernest Chavez, that's the one fight where Tukhugov looked really good. It was really dominant and, just busted out all of his unorthodox strikes and took him out cleanly in the first round. But Moicano beat Tommy Namaki, which admittedly, that's probably not too much better of an opponent than the guys Tukhugov fought. Well, maybe it is, I'm not sure, but, Namaki, he lost those 3 fights in a row, and we haven't heard from him since then. But Renato Moicano, he looked decent in his fight, from what I remember, was outstriking Namaki, and then got him to the ground and choked him out, I think, in the second round. I don't expect him to be as defenseless as Chavez was on the feet against Tukhugov, and Tukhugov really, I thought, didn't look good. He looked really flat in his last fight against Felipe Nover, who, again, is not a high-level opponent in my eyes. And I think Nover was able to get a few takedowns on him, but really kind of seemed to throw Tukhugov off his game. And if Nover could do that, I think Moicano, he's going to be good enough on the feet to, do something similar. And I expect him to get it to the ground here. So I'm taking Moicano, maybe by submission, maybe decision, not quite sure. And it's not based off of a whole lot. I mean, he's only had one fight, and Tukhugov, a couple fights, only one where he looked really good. The rest were kind of lackluster. So not a real confident pick, but I'm feeling Moicano here. All right, next up at welterweight, Sergio Moraes versus Luan Chagas. Chagas is a debuting fighter, so you guys know that means that I can't make a pick. Sergio Moraes, I was really high on him after he beat Neil Magny a couple years ago. I think it was his second fight after Tough, and has serious jiu-jitsu skills, but since coming back after his layoff has just looked probably worse than he did when he fought in the Tough finale. I mean, his fight against Mikel Laboute, nothing really happened, and seems to really want to strike now and not even attempt takedowns, which is really weird. But also, in his last fight against Omari Akhmedov, just chose to strike with him and didn't even seem really insistent on going for the takedown, and just got outpointed by Akhmedov for that whole fight until he landed a knockout strike in the third round. So I think he's kind of going backwards a little bit. But without knowing Chagas, I wouldn't be able to make any kind of prediction here. So we're going to move on to the featured fight past prelim at light heavyweight. Antonio Joseria Nogueira versus Patrick Cummins. I'm definitely going to take Cummins here. He's not actually that much younger than Nogueira. I mean, he's 35 and Little Nog is 39, but in terms of fight years, there's a big difference there. Cummins has a ton less miles on his tires than Nogueira. But I'm going to take Cummins, and like I mentioned before, I think this fight and the Shogun Anderson fight, I think they're identical matchups. And I think, for an aged veteran like Little Nog and Shogun, these big wrestlers, it's the worst matchup for them at this stage of their career. It's the hardest style to get a win against. So I'm definitely taking Cummins. We've seen him dominate guys on the ground. Seems to have not much trouble getting the takedown against weaker competition. Did get the takedown, or he hit a takedown against Teixeira, and even on the feet, I thought he was doing okay in that fight. Eventually, couldn't keep up with Teixeira, got overwhelmed and TKO'd on the feet, but did land a few shots on Teixeira. But if for some reason Cummins isn't able to get the takedown, I don't think it's out of the question at all that Nogueira is able to hurt him on the feet. Nogueira should be more technical, less mobile, but probably still more technical and probably more power in his hands even at this point. We saw against Shogun, he was able to hurt him. But I think Cummins, as good a wrestler he is and as big as he is, I just think it's going to be a real tough matchup for Nogueira, to have to fight off those takedowns. So I like Cummins here. I don't think he'll finish Lil Nog even if he is able to repeatedly get him down, but I definitely like him to win a decision. All right, on to the Fox Sports 1 prelim card at bantamweight. John Lineker versus Rob Font. I'm actually not too high on this matchup. I like both guys. I've liked both of Rob Font's performances, but I was really looking forward to Lineker versus Garbrandt. I think that was supposed to happen some card in the last 6 months. I think that was scheduled for, and now it's going to be Almeida versus Garbrandt, the next event after this. But Lineker moving up to bantamweight, looked good against Francisco Rivera. I mean, pretty much did to him what he was able to do to everyone at flyweight. I think he probably even got him out of there quicker than he did most guys at flyweight. I don't know how the size might affect him. Looked okay against Rivera. I'm not sure if Rob Font's a little bigger guy, but Rob Font got a knockout win over George Roop in the first round in his debut, and then against Joey Gomez in his last fight looked pretty good and pushed a high pace, through volume and really used a lot of pressure to overwhelm Gomez. And if that's what his game is, if that's what he has to do to win, I don't see him beating Lineker at that game. Lineker is probably one of the most effective brawlers in the sport. He's got great hand speed, a lot of power, but he throws pretty good combinations too. He can mix up his strikes, throw varied combinations. So I just like Lineker. I think if they're just, like I said, trading shots and they're just going to try to outpace one another, I think Lineker has more power, he hits harder, and it's probably has the better combination. So I like Lineker here. Unless the size difference is a real issue, I don't see why Lineker should lose this. So I do like Rob Font, but Lineker is more tested. He has a win over McCall and has beaten some other guys at flyweight. And his last fight over Rivera, I would say Rivera is probably a better opponent than Font. So I'm going with Lineker here by TKO. All right, next up at lightweight, Francisco Trinaldo versus Yancy Medeiros. This is a good matchup. Trinaldo's been on a real roll lately, has looked much improved over his last couple of fights, and I expect him to get the win here. Yancy Medeiros, one of these guys with an unorthodox striking style, lands spinning back kicks. That's how he took out Joe. What's his name? Joe Proctor. And, has a knockout over Yves Edwards and had another really good performance over Damon Jackson. But his last fight against John Makdessi, we saw that a more talented striker was really able to kind of take him out of his element, and think Medeiros probably deserved to lose that decision. I mean, I scored it for him, but it was super close, and honestly, it kind of looked like Makdessi won. And then when he's faced better competition like Miller and Poirier, they just get him out of there quickly. I like Trinaldo with his forward pressure and his kickboxing and his wrestling. He's really become a bit of a bruiser. He just dropped Chad Laprise in the first round of their fight, and from there took his back and pounded him out. And then against Ross Pearson, I expected him to lose that fight, and was able to maintain his pace for all 3 rounds. Just a lot of forward pressure, and was able to hit that takedown, and that's been his problem, is the cardio. And especially at his age, I think he's 37, and he cuts a lot of weight. This guy competed at heavyweight, I think it was, or not heavyweight, sorry, what am I saying? Middleweight, I think. Yeah, he competed at middleweight on Tough, and I always remember him puking in the bucket after the Gleison Tebow fight. I think there's always a chance a guy that old just shows up one day and the wheels have completely fallen off. And against a guy like Medeiros, who can be really dangerous and unorthodox, that could be a really bad outcome for him. But I think Trinaldo should get the win here. Medeiros has looked really good against not so great competition, and Trinaldo's a real solid kickboxer, and he's got a good wrestling game. And he's been on a roll, so I like him here. But if he does fade, watch out for Medeiros. I think he could take over if Trinaldo really starts to fade, especially considering he's got all those unorthodox strikes. But he really didn't look like himself against Makdessi, and Trinaldo's been looking really good lately. So I have to go with Trinaldo to, I think, win a decision at least, if not take him out, because Medeiros was hurt to the body by Miller, and then just Poirier connected on the chin and put him out in the first round. So I do think Trinaldo could probably hurt him early, but definitely taking Trinaldo to win by one fashion or another. All right, next up at middleweight, Thiago Santos versus Nate Marquardt. You definitely have to go with Santos here. He's another guy who's just really been improving and looking better each time out and against better competition. Nate Marquardt did pick up the win last time against CB Dalloway, but I don't think that is really indicative of him turning things around and being able to perform well against strong competition. I mean, he's just looked like absolute garbage against Gastelum, and the Lombard and Jake Ellenberger knockouts were really bad losses. Santos is going to be the more technical striker. I don't think Marquardt can time him like he did against Dalloway. Santos is just too technical for that. And Santos has really added power to his strikes. Really did a great job of stuffing the takedowns of Theodoro in his last fight. So definitely going with Santos here. I think he's really going to let his hands go, and Marquardt just can't trade like that. When guys start pressuring him, he just becomes defenseless and falls apart. So I like Santos to get a first round knockout here. Yeah, I'm going with him by first round KO. All right, next up at welterweight, Damian Maia versus Matt Brown. This is the fight I'm excited about most on the entire card, even more than the title fight, which I am really looking forward to, and the co-main event as well. But this is an amazing matchup right here, and it's really a shame that it's a prelim fight and that it's just flying under the radar in general, because this is just really an A-level fight. Initially, when this matchup was announced, I said that I was going to take Maia. I just thought that it was way too different of a matchup for Brown than he's ever really faced in the UFC, especially recently. I mean, just other than Hendricks, hasn't really fought a guy who was going to wrestle with him. You know, all of his fights were pretty much stand-up affairs. Eric Silva did get him down, and Brown survived, but, you know, Maia is going to just press him and smother him, you know, try to wrap him up, get his hands on him, and stick to him like glue, get him to the ground. And Matt Brown, not having, you know, really experience facing a style like that, I thought, you know, he pretty much doesn't have a chance, and Maia's just going to do to him what he did to Gunnar Nelson and Neil Magny. But I thought about the matchup some more, and I've convinced myself to take Brown, and it's not like most of my predictions, and I usually let you guys know when I'm like really confident and feel like I really have a good handle on something, but I still think I still think it's a bad matchup for Brown and a style he hasn't faced, and I still think Maia is definitely very capable of winning it, but I am taking Brown now, and I think he has some pretty big advantages if you really think about things that Maia has struggled with over the years, and maybe not so much recently, but just things that, some weaknesses you've seen from him. But I will say that Maia has definitely stepped it up a notch. Submitting Neil Magny, considering what he's done recently, you know, the win over Lombard, and well, yeah, that's mainly it. But you know, also has the wins over Silva, which was after the Magny fight, or after the Maia fight. But Maia's really stepped it up, I think. Magny and Gunnar Nelson, those are, I think, better guys than, you know, Rick Story, Dong Hyun Kim, maybe John Fitch at the time that Maia beat him. I think those are, you know, better fighters with, you know, more of a modern MMA skill set, and Maia just totally dominated both of them, especially the Gunnar Nelson fight. It's not just that he lay and prayed Gunnar Nelson, but we saw Maia do some serious damage with his ground and pound. I mean, just beat up Nelson and wore him out, which is something we haven't really seen from Maia. So I was really impressed by that. He's definitely been stepping it up a notch. Even getting the submission over Magny. Maia has not always submitted guys who he should have in the past. Fighters who were, you know, just were of a far lower caliber than Maia. He hasn't been able to submit, and that's my first big point here, is that Maia, for as good as a grappler and ground fighter as he is, he hasn't always gotten that submission. And I'm talking about guys like Mario Miranda in the Jorge Santiago fight, where he chose to strike with him and didn't even really want to play the grappling game. And even recently, Ryan LaFleur and Alexander Yakovlev. You know, Yakovlev, he got him down, got him in mount, I think in the first round in that fight, didn't submit him. I don't know if it's that he can't or if he's just conservative. And Ryan LaFleur totally dominated him for 4 rounds of that fight, and didn't really threaten any close submissions. I think that's the first big thing to consider here. How many times have we seen Matt Brown, come back from the brink of defeat? The Jordan Meehan fight, the Eric Silva fight, where he was hurt badly, and Silva dropped him with the body kick and took his back, and Matt Brown survived. I think it's unlikely that Maia submits Brown. I really do. I think he can dominate him there, like he did to Gunnar Nelson. But I don't think you're going to break Matt Brown that way. The guy's too tough and has shown too many times that he really gets stronger, when he's, put in a very bad position, and when, he's really close to being put away. That's when he really digs deep and comes back and then just turns the tables on you. So I don't think he's going to submit Brown. I think that's kind of unlikely. And even if he gets him down repeatedly, unless he puts a real beating on him like he did to Gunnar Nelson, I don't think Matt Brown's going to get discouraged if he's just taken down and held down and out positioned on the ground. If Maia does damage, that's another story. I think that could, really wear out Brown. But if he's just out positioning him like he did to LaFleur, if he doesn't get him out of there, I think Brown is, the start of that third round. If he dropped the first 2 badly, he's still going to be a serious threat for every moment that this fight is on the feet. And the other big thing to consider is how many times Maia's just given away the third round because he just completely either, just loses gas or just, the wheels start to fall off. It happened in the Ryan LaFleur fight. I mean, you watch that fight in the 5th round, this guy, Maia, was falling to his back, and I think the ref even warned him to stop doing that or he would take a point. The Yakovlev fight dominated him for the first 2 rounds, got mounted in the 3rd round of that fight. And the Rory McDonald fight, he also started to wane after having a really dominant first, and didn't have much gas at the end of that one. And yeah, those are the main examples, I think. And if that happens here, he starts to, if he's gassed to the point that, he becomes immobile and he has to start pulling guard. Brown, cardio hasn't been an issue for him. I mean, this is a guy who went 5 rounds with Robbie Lawler and, clearly lost that fight, but, Lawler, he's the current champ, and Matt Brown hung with him for 5 rounds. If his cardio starts to go, I see Brown just completely taking over late in that fight, pouring everything on Maia, and I think he could really put him away, get a finish. So those are the main things. Maia, he hasn't always submitted people that are, far lower caliber fighters than him, and he has a tendency to really fall apart in the 3rd, or in the case of the LaFleur fight, the 5th round of his fight. So those are advantages I really like for Brown. And then just in general on the feet, Maia's striking is serviceable at best, but he's not really hurting anybody with it. Did outstrike Gunnar Nelson, I would say, but that was after he already took him down and really pounded on him. But if Matt Brown's able to get any kind of time in on the feet here, I think he's just going to really give Maia a lot of problems, make him really struggle to get that takedown. Matt Brown's become really nasty in the clinch, elbows from short distance, and just his Muay Thai game overall, it's really dangerous, and he has knockout power, which we've seen from him over the last few years. And the Hendricks fight, he made Hendricks unwilling to strike with him. I thought he was outstriking him in the clinch, and even though he pretty much got dominated with the wrestling in that fight, I thought from his back he was he had a pretty good defensive guard, and I don't remember how well he was able to fight back to his feet in that fight, but he definitely didn't let Hendricks get off any big ground and pound on him. Not that that's typical of Hendricks, but he definitely was defending himself pretty well with jiu-jitsu off of his back. So I think Brown's gonna be tough, even if Maia gets him down, and I think he's gonna do an okay job of defending himself, at least enough to survive. And then on the feet, I just see him having a big advantage for every second that the fight is on the feet. I don't think he's going to be like Gunnar Nelson, where Maia's just going to be able to march forward and walk him down until he can grab hold. I think Maia's going to have a big challenge covering the distance on Brown. So I'm going to take Matt Brown in this fight. I really do. I really see him having those advantages. And Maia certainly has stepped up his game. He's been very impressive. But I like Matt Brown here, and I wouldn't be surprised if Maia wins, but I do like Brown. So I know I talked way too long on this fight, but really wanted to make all those points and drive them home. But I'm gonna take Brown. And I'm gonna say TKO. I think he can get it done, especially late in that fight if Maia starts to wane. All right, try to move quickly through the rest of these to make up for that really long prediction. All right, on to the main card. First fight at welterweight: Warlley Alves versus Bryan Barberena. I see this as pretty much a wash for Alves. Barberena is a tough guy, but he's kind of a durable, tough, but low-skilled guy. Did submit Sage Northcutt. Got the finish over Joe Ellenberger in his debut. But, Chad Laprice, he kind of, outpointed this guy pretty thoroughly for at least a round and a half before Barberena started to take over, and was starting to pour it on Laprice late in that fight. Definitely won the last round. But against Alves, who's just an athletic monster, who's got great submissions and is pretty athletic on the feet, and who was able to hang with Alan Jouban for 3 rounds, who's a higher level kickboxer than Barberena. I don't really see Alves having trouble with Barberena here, so I think Alves is going to be able to get it to the ground and get a submission first or second round. So next up at light heavyweight, Shogun Rua versus Corey Anderson. Like I said, this is pretty much an identical matchup to the Lil Nog Cummins fight, and I don't have anything too much different to say on this one. Shogun Rua, his chin is pretty much shot. I mean, the St. Preux knockout, and Little Nog sparked him on the feet and almost put him out, but Shogun Rua showed a decent wrestling game, I thought, against Lil Nog, and he still has power, even though his chin is pretty shot at this point. He still got some power in his hands, and we saw that against James Tehuna, and even Dan Henderson in the second fight was able to wobble him a few times. And Anderson being knocked out by Jean Vellante, and also eating some hard shots from Tom Lawler in his last fight, early in the fight. If he's not able to get the takedown, I don't think it's out of the question that Shogun could knock him out. I really don't think that is super unlikely. But Anderson, he's a real workman-like fighter, very methodical, and again, I just think Shogun Rua, a guy at his age, and Anderson having the youth advantage and being more athletic, and he's going to be persistent with the takedown attempts. I think that's just a real hard style for Rua to be able to defend against at this point, and I see Anderson just getting him down and really working him over with the wrestling and on the ground. So I like Anderson for a decision, but if you can't get him to the ground, then watch out. I think there is a chance that Hua hurts him on the feet. All right, next up, the feature fight, a catchweight fight at 140, Chris Cyborg versus Leslie Smith. Normally I wouldn't make a pick, and I'll be honest, I've never really seen a Cyborg fight. I think the only one I saw was the one last summer in Invicta. I think I saw highlights of that fight, or maybe I watched the full thing, a rerun where she just destroyed that lady on the feet. I think Faith Van Duyn. I think that was the fight. But from what I remember, just watching that fight, and again, her opponent's probably a far weaker opponent than Leslie Smith, I would assume. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's at least for me, for my own conscience, it's safe to assume that Cyborg is a more technical and a far more lethal striker than Leslie Smith. And Leslie Smith has grit. She throws volume. I thought she looked really good taking out Jessamine Duke. But even in her last fight against Rin Nakai, I thought she should have lost that fight, got taken down by Nakai, and Nakai had a few instances where she was able to close the distance and land some big shots from inside. I think Cyborg's just, frankly, just too high level a fighter for Leslie Smith to get a win against. So I like Cyborg here. I can't really say if she gets a finish or not. I kind of assume she will, but again, I haven't been watching her fights at all, but I will go ahead and make the pick here for Cyborg. All right, the co-main event, a middleweight, Ronaldo Jacare Souza versus Vitor Belfort. Another really pretty awesome matchup, and this is another one. When the fight was announced, I said Jacare hands down. The wrestling game, the pressure, I thought that was really going to be, like I said, for Brown, a style that Belfort hasn't really had to face too much. A guy who's really going to look to wrestle him and get him down. Most of the guys that Belfort is beaten in the UFC are guys who were willing to stand with him. And considering that Weidman, took him down and just got in mount pretty easily and pounded him out from there after being hurt on the feet, I think Souza has a big advantage if he can get it to the ground. Souza's very skilled there. Just the way he passes guard and moves to mount, the wall walk he did on Kamosi, I think he would really dominate Belfort if he's able to put him on his back. I don't think Belfort can grapple with him. Although Belfort did, throw up that armbar on Jones. I don't think he's going to do that to Souza. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. He might be able to, exceed our expectations for what he can do on the ground if, he's on his back against Jacare. But I think very likely Souza would probably eat him up on the ground and maybe even submit him. On the feet, though, that last fight against Yoel Romero, Souza looked really uncomfortable, out of his element, and Belfort isn't as high volume at all as Romero is, and he's not as reckless as that. He really is pretty much the opposite. He's very patient and really likes to time his shots. So I don't think he's going to put that kind of volume on Souza. But I do think that Souza is not going to be... he's not going to put as much pressure and just blitz Belfort like he's done to guys like Okami or Gegard Mousasi. Mousasi was really just blitzing him and being almost a little bit reckless, just throwing wild shots to close the distance and closing in on him against the cage, getting the takedown. I don't think he's going to do that against Belfort. I think he's going to have too much respect for Belfort's hands. And then it becomes a bit of a striking from distance game. And from there, I think Belfort just has a big advantage with the kicks. And again, in the last fight against Romero, Souza just didn't really have any kind of answer he couldn't strike with Romero. It wasn't until he caught him in that third round, wobbled him and was able to take him down from there. So I think for that first round, if Souza can't get the takedown right away, and he might be able to, but I just don't think he's going to really rush in and try to close the distance immediately on Belfort. It's going to be a bit of a feeling out process, I think. And from there, I think Belfort just has a lot more tools on the feet to work with, and he's really great at setting his strikes up and you're really finding the opening. So I like Belfort. I think he has a good chance of landing that kill shot before Souza can get him to the ground. So I'm taking Belfort. I know that's going to be an unpopular pick. Souza is a very elite fighter. Respect him very much. But I think Belfort just really has an advantage on the feet. And that Yoel Romero performance, I really expected Souza to look better, but look very hesitant. And I just think, if he looks like that here, Belfort's going to be able to capitalize early and hurt him and get him out of there. So I'm taking Belfort. And Belfort, as badly as he looked on the ground against Weidman, he did have him on the ropes early in that fight. I think a lot of people like to discount Belfort and underrate him because the whole TRT scandal, and he hasn't been fighting really relevant guys lately. I mean, the 2 wins over Dan Henderson, maybe not very meaningful, but on TRT, off TRT, looked the exact same against Henderson, put him away both times. He's a really dangerous fighter, even given his age. Another example of Belfort struggling off of his back was the Anthony Johnson fight. And frankly, I thought the stand-ups in that fight were BS. So if Jacare gets Belfort on his back, I think he could probably submit him. But I'm still taking Belfort. I feel an upset coming here. I think Belfort has an advantage on the feet, so I like Belfort. And frankly, I would like Belfort's chances against Rockhold in a rematch. And I think Souza is a tougher matchup for Belfort probably than Rockhold. But I'm taking Rockhold. I think he gets a TKO first or second round. All right, in the main event for the heavyweight title, Fabrizio Werdum versus Stipe Miocic. Initially, I kind of carved out a scenario in my head where I thought Miocic could win this, and I thought that Miocic could make use of his power and his speed advantage, and basically try to blitz Werdum like he did to Arlovsky in his last fight. And I thought because Werdum was dropped a couple of times by Hunt in their fight, I thought Miocic stood a decent chance of scoring the upset by knocking him out early. But thinking about that more, I think that the chances of that happening are pretty low. I mean, Werdum was dropped a couple of times by Mark Hunt, but he did survive. And on the flip side of that, you could say that he ate Hunt's biggest shots and survived and then knocked out Mark Hunt. And other than that, we haven't really seen Werdum's chin really compromised, at least since he's come back to the UFC. And he took all of Kane's biggest shots and not only survived but managed to counter Kane to the point where he was hurting Kane a lot more than he was getting hurt by Kane. And Miocic, he does have knockout power, but we've only really seen it against Arlovsky, who has a bit of a glass chin, and against Fabio Maldonado. And that was a light heavyweight stepping up on short notice to fight a really legit heavyweight. And other than that, we haven't really seen him hurt guys too much with his striking. And that's not to say he's a bad striker. I think he's actually a pretty technical striker with really sound boxing. We saw him stick and move against Roy Nelson really effectively. But the other fights, like against Gabriel Gonzaga, didn't look too hot. And the other advantage that I thought initially Miocic could have was with the wrestling. Against Mark Hunt, did a good job of avoiding a brawl and hitting the takedowns, and from there just dominating him, and he was relentless with his ground and pound. But if Werdum could counter Kane's takedown attempts or defend against them for the most part, and then when Kane finally was able to get one, he was able to lock up the guillotine that ended the fight off of it. I don't really see Miocic being able to have much success out wrestling Werdum. I think he could probably get him down, but Werdum is such a tall, lanky guy, and with his world-class jiu-jitsu is able to submit Kane, submit Fedor. I don't really see Miocic being able to overpower him and nullify his guard. I really don't see that. I mean, holding down Mark Hunt, a completely different body type, a short, stocky guy, who's frankly out of shape. He wasn't able to fight back up to his feet. He just was stuck there. I don't see that being the case with Werdum at all. And I just want to compare their heights real quick here. I don't think Werdum has a height advantage. I thought he might have one. No, both guys are 6'4", but still, Miocic might have a bit of a strength advantage, I think, if it hits the mat. But with Verdum's world-class jiu-jitsu, I really think he would threaten Miocic with a submission if he is put on his back. I don't see Miocic being able to, just hold him down and pound away like he did against Mark Hunt. So if you take away, those possibilities, just blitzing him and catching him with something big, and or being able to take him down and work him over on the ground over several rounds. After that, I just really don't see any avenue for Miocic to win this fight at all. I don't think he can, point fight with Werdum, especially from distance. I mean, Werdum put on a clinic against Travis Brown and mixed up his kicks and his strikes really well. I think he would have a good advantage over Miocic if it becomes a point battle from range. And in the clinch, Miocic is strong. He implemented that well against JDS. But Werdum, if Kane wasn't able to dominate him in the clinch, he's the master of that. I don't think Miocic can. And, Verdum's counter-striking, again, looked great against Kane. So Miocic tries to really close that distance. I think Werdum can counter him. And I think Verdum's just the more skilled guy on the feet and on the ground. Miocic is real tough, but I just don't really see a path for him here. I don't see, where his skills successfully match up against Werdum. So I think Werdum really has every facet covered here pretty much. Again, aside from the power, I think Miocic, anyone could at any time, knock another fighter out. But I think Miocic, he has a chance of doing that. But again, I don't think it's really likely. Verdum's chin is held up pretty well. And I think Verdum's just got a lot more tools to work with on the feet. And Miocic, he still took a lot of damage against JDS. And he's still a guy who got knocked out by Struve. That was a couple of years ago and is obviously a much improved fighter now. But I think Werdum still has every advantage in this fight. So I am going with Werdum. And I think I'll say by... I think we either a decision or a late TKO, maybe fourth or fifth round for Werdum. I think if he, really starts to, rack up a lot of points and really wear out Miocic like he did against Brown, I think he could wear him down to the point where he's open for the finish late in the fight. So I'm not quite sure which way I'll go, but I think Werdum by possibly late fourth or fifth round TKO. This is something that one of my viewers, sorry, I can't remember his name, but he always asks me, what are my most confident picks. I think he asks for 5, so I'm going to try to do that here. And this is just kind of off the top of my head without much thought. But I'm going to try to do this, remember to do this for all of my videos from now on after I give all my predictions. So for my 5 most confident picks, I guess I would go, and this isn't going to be in any order, Cyborg, Alves, Santos, I'll go Cummins, and these are a lot of close fights, and I'll go Lineker. So those will be my 5 most confident. Yeah. Again, thank you guys for watching, and again, don't forget to follow me on Twitter. My link will be in the description, and I'll be back soon with picks for Fight Night, Almeida versus Garbrandt, and we got 199 coming up, 200. Should be a great summer, and I'm going to get back on track with getting my videos out early, and hopefully be making some improvements to the show. Yeah. Thank you guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.